Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men, shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where our intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention here is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing amazing and remarkable things in the world. And joining me today is a gentleman who is doing just that. His name is James Wright. And he's a speaker, he's a coach, he's an author, just an all-around awesome dude. So we're excited to have him on the show. So without further ado, hello, James, and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes. How are you?
Oh, Michael, I am fantastic today. Thank you. And how are you?
Doing great. Again, looking forward to this conversation. I've been kind of following you on social media, and I said, yeah, that's a brother I got to get on the show so we can have this conversation about empowerment. There's so much negativity and pessimism out there. We need to have some conversations about empowerment, and you were the perfect person for that. So we're going to talk about your book, we're going to talk about your work, but let's begin with a few icebreaker questions. So first of all, tell us where you're from and give us the Cliff Note version of what it was like growing up for you.
Well, Michael, I'm originally from upstate New York, Rochester to be exact. And growing up was typical for probably what most Black men growing up in my age range at that particular time in the 50s and 60s, born in the 50s, being raised up in the 60s. Things were not so great. We were very poor. We lived in a poor neighborhood. We were on welfare. Probably the standard that a lot of Black people were growing up at that time due to the prejudices that exist in this country. So my childhood was pretty much a struggle. And it was a struggle that, I look back on and sometimes I wonder, well, was it good to be in that situation? Because maybe it made me stronger so that I could be who I am today. Or if my life would have been different if I didn't have that struggle. We never know about these things. But growing up in that struggle from an early age, I did understand and I did realize that it was not a life that I wanted for myself when I became an adult. I began to realize at a very young age that there had to be something better, that if I was going to live a long life, I definitely didn't want to live it like that, struggling and not having money, not being able to dress the way I wanted to dress, not being able to eat the way I wanted to eat. So from a very young age, like around 7, 8 years old, I began to realize that this was not going to be the type of life that I wanted to live for the rest of my life.
Nice. Now, you and I, seems like we're on the exact same trajectory. So there's no accidents that we're having this conversation because our stories are so similar. So my next question is, name a woman who's inspired you to be who you are.
A woman who's inspired me to be who I am. Oh, I hadn't never really given that some thought because, there were some men that inspired me to be who I am. But I guess if I had to say a woman who inspired me to be who I am today, I would have to say Diana Ross.
Oh, interesting.
hmm
Interesting.
Diana Ross, because, and the reason being is um, her ability to just take control and step out there and just go for it. Just decide that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be in control, and I am going to be in the spotlight and shine.
Yeah. So with that being said, name a man that you look up to and admire.
Well, for men, I was able to find that right in my family. I had uncles. I had one uncle that just traveled the world. I mean, I remember he told me, he said there were like 160 something nations in the United Nations, and he said I wanted to visit every country that was in the United Nations.
Wow.
He's now in his 90s. And at last count, he told me of those 160 something nations, he had visited 130 something of those countries.
Wow.
So he was an inspiration for me growing up. I had another uncle who also did a lot of traveling. He didn't do a lot of foreign traveling, but because he had a large family and like about 6 kids, so they didn't travel internationally so much, but they saw everything in the United States that you could see. He would just pile them in the car, and he was a real family man. So those two men, because I didn't have a father figure that I could look up to, and the man that was supposed to be my father, you know, I mean, he wasn't the guy that I wanted to emulate, because obviously he was living somewhere else with another family. So I was like, this is not the example of what a real man should be.
Yeah.
So those two uncles of mine were my inspiration in that area.
Now, do you like movies?
I like them somewhat. I'm not really a movie buff.
Not a movie buff, but name a movie. What's the first movie come to mind if I ask you to name a movie that you like?
The first movie that comes to mind, if you ask me to name a movie that I like, probably would be Purple Rain.
Oh, yeah. Great movie. Great, great, great movie. So if I gave you a magic wand and you could create anything your heart desired, what would your life look like 5 years from now? What would James be doing?
James would be speaking to the masses, helping to change the world to the degree that I was helping people to understand that they have the power within themselves to walk a path that they choose to walk, that they don't have to conform with society or what society says they should or should not be, says they can and cannot do, that they have the option to choose. And as long as they are trying to serve mankind and leave a better footprint when they leave this world, that is all that is required of them.
Now, there are some people who are pretty pessimistic about the future in general, while others are really optimistic about the future in general. So where do you fall on that spectrum between optimism and pessimism for the future in general? Where do you fall?
I'm very optimistic about it. And the reason being, I think it's an individual thing. I think it's what you make it to be, because there are always going to be obstacles. There are always going to be challenges, and the world in general is always going to have problems. I look at this thing about the race thing, and one thing that I learned from an early age, and I still continue to see it today, we always have to have some group of people that we put down. If we're not going to put down Blacks, we're going to put down Asians. If we're not going to put down Asians, we're going to put down gay people. If we're not going to put down gay people, we're going to put down Jews. But society never seems to be satisfied unless they have a group of people that they can find to put down. And it's a bad situation, but that's just the way it has been throughout history.
So now I'd like you to introduce James Wright, the professional. So tell the audience about what you do.
Okay, as you stated in the introduction, I am a transformation coach, an author, and a speaker. And what I do is I like to spend my time working with people, trying to get people to understand that for the most part, a lot of the obstacles that they face in life are due to the fact that they have been conditioned from birth to think a certain way. And unfortunately, that way is not beneficial for them. And I like to, I use this example. It's like elephants in a circus. What they do with the elephants in the circus, when those elephants are babies, they tie a rope around their ankle and they pin those elephants down with that rope. Now, because the elephant is a baby, when he tugs against the rope is stronger than he is, and he cannot break free. So when you see this full-grown elephant, he's tied to the same rope that he could easily pull away from. But because he's been conditioned from birth to think that that rope is stronger than he is, even though he's grown and he could break free, his mind has been conditioned to not even try. And that's what they do to us as we grow up. We come out of the womb and we have so many expectations. We have so many things that we believe that we can do, that we can try, that we can succeed at. But unfortunately, through the process of growing up, people start telling us what you cannot do, what you should not expect, how you should live your life, how you shouldn't live your life. And before you know it, all of these creative juices, the creative energy that we are born with, it is stifled. So now as we enter into adulthood, we don't believe that we can do certain things. We don't even see opportunities that are before us because we've been conditioned not to even look for them. So even though the opportunity is there right in front of our eyes, because we have been conditioned not to look, not to see, not to expect, we are like blind men. We just don't even understand and see it, and we don't reach out and grasp it.
Yeah, and when you start talking about conditioning, if we think about it from a Black perspective, the conditioning that we've experienced of what we can't do, the continual media coverage of all the negative aspects of, especially for Black men.
Yes.
We're conditioned to believe that some of us buy into these stereotypes, these stereotypes of who we are as Black men. And as you mentioned, we have to be willing to change our mindsets about those conditioning. We must become aware of how those, because they're really just nothing but beliefs. We're feeling these beliefs based on what we're seeing externally. But the key for us is to go inside, to look inside. What are the challenges, beliefs, and assumptions we have about ourselves and about the world around us? And that's the only way we'll be able to break those chains, as you mentioned, the elephant and the rope. The only way we can break free is to change our minds. And that's what that's what you're really good at. So I have come to know that there are only two things that'll cause a person to want to change. One is pain, and then the other is what I call divine discontent. So
okay, great.
How did you begin your journey? Because I know this inner journey, very few people are willing to go on this journey, but there is usually some event, something that happens that challenges us to begin that journey. So how did your inner journey begin?
Well, I think again, my inner journey began, it goes back to childhood. I think my inner journey began with the fact of going to school and feeling embarrassed because I could not wear the clothes that I wanted to wear, feeling embarrassed because I didn't have a father that was living in the home with me, feeling embarrassed because we were on welfare. Now, granted, this is the way I was feeling. Now, as an adult, I have come to understand this, that more than likely all the other kids were in the same boat that I was in because we were living in the same neighborhood, going to the same public school, which at that time, you know, you went to a Black public school and they were probably all, but I didn't realize in my youth that, hey, they're probably dealing with the same issues at home that I'm dealing with. There were no there were no leaders or people, men to look up to on TV or anything like that. Anytime you saw a Black man on TV, he was doing something either against the law and negative, or they were, you know, making him like, yes sir, no sir type. So there, so for me, it was one of those things where I was just really embarrassed. I was ashamed. I didn't feel confident. I felt very inferior. I didn't think I was smart. I didn't think I had anything to really offer. And but the one thing that I did know, and as I stated this earlier, even though I had all of that working against me, the one thing that I did know is that somehow, some kind of way, I was going to have a better life. Now, how I was going to do it, I had no idea and I had no clue. But I did know I was in pain. And this type of pain was not a pain that I was willing to carry around for a lifetime.
Mm. Now, so I can relate to that divine discontent in you, knowing that there was a better way to live. Even though you were in that environment, there was a part of you that knew, I don't want to live my life this way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was born to a single mom with 6 kids in the inner city projects also. And so
Okay.
we were basically the poster children for poverty back in the 60s, right?
Yes.
But there was a part of me, because I hear some people say, we were poor, but I didn't know we were poor. Well, I knew we were. I
Yeah, I
knew.
never understand
Yeah, I knew we were poor, and I didn't like
yeah.
it at all. I mean, I hated it. There was a part of me that says no. Now, the good news is, despite our financial situation, my mom instilled in me a very simple lesson. And I'll never forget, she told me this, I was probably 5 years old. And she said, Michael, if you want something badly enough, there's no one or no thing that can keep you from attaining it except yourself.
Okay. Well, see, Michael, you were very fortunate to that degree. Um, Unfortunately, and I say this often, my parents should not have been parents. But, I mean, I guess they had to be parents to bring me here, you know, but as I stated, my father was not present. And my mother was just the opposite of what you just said your mother was. My mother was always, Black people can't do that. Poor people can't do that. You shouldn't expect that because they don't let Black people do that. And when you're poor, you can't do that. So, you know, I didn't even have that support there like that to say, you know, hey, you can do this. You can break free from this. Just because you're living in this condition doesn't mean you have to stay in this condition. In her mind, this was just the way life was for Black people, and I needed to learn to accept it and get used to it. And I just didn't understand that.
Yeah. And see, and that's, unfortunately, that is the case. It's in too many cases, that's what we receive from our parents, from our cultures, from our society, this whole idea of what's not possible.
Right.
But I also believe, because I see the world through a spiritual lens.
Okay.
Through a spiritual lens, what I recognize is there is a divine intelligence in all of us
Mm-hmm.
that we have access to. And for those of us who sometimes unknowingly listen to that still small voice within us. That still small voice is what guides us
Yes.
to get out of those types of situations. So my mom laid the foundation by telling me if I wanted something badly enough, I could have it. But there was a part of me that accepted that as truth.
Yes.
And that part of me that accepted it as truth is what I call divine intelligence. It is that inner knowing of what we're capable of as human beings. Every
Yes.
human being has access to that inner voice, but very few people access it. So
Yes.
to change our conditioning, we must be willing to access that still small voice within us, because it is that voice that will tell us to say, or will challenge us to say, I can change my life.
Well, actually, that's what I try to do with the people that I work with. That still quiet voice that you're talking about. You're right. Every one of us has it. I mean, it's just there. You know, you can try to ignore it, and you can ignore it to the point so long that you don't even really hear it. But that doesn't mean that it's still not there. So that's part of my job. What I do is to get you to the point where you can start listening again. You can start hearing again. Because once you start listening and you start hearing that voice that is within you, it will lead you, it will guide, it will never steer you wrong. Now, it doesn't mean that every decision that you make, every pathway that you take, is just going to be smooth sailing. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean if you listen to that voice, even though you may go through some storms, you may go through some rough periods. If you're listening to that voice, it will guide you on to victory. You will come out on the winning end. You will never come out a loser if you are listening to that voice that's within you.
Now, who were some of the mentors and teachers that you've learned from that have helped you, number one, have this type of mindset of transformation? Who were some of the teachers and mentors that you learned from?
I had two teachers in school, both Black women. My third grade teacher was one of them. She was the first teacher in the third grade that I told you earlier that I felt like maybe I wasn't so smart and different things of that nature. She was the first one that made me understand and realize that, hey, I'm not as dumb as I I'm not as dumb as they made me think that I am. There were some circumstances that led up to me thinking that. One of the things was I ended up flunking the first grade. And when I flunked the first grade, which is not a very how can I? It doesn't really help your ego, you know. And so what they did when I flunked the first grade, instead of finding out what the problem was, they put me in with the slow kids. They said I was too slow to learn. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until I was in the third grade that my third grade teacher realized there's nothing wrong with this kid. He's not too slow to learn. And she got me out of the slow group into the accelerated group. And that was when I learned I could actually do the accelerated work. And I stayed in accelerated classes all the way through elementary school and on through high school. I never was slow again. You know, so she was one, and then the other one was my teacher. She was the teacher that I had in high school, and she told me, she said, James, she said, I expect that you can do great things. I'm looking for great things from you. She was the first person that ever told me that she thought I could do great things, and that stayed with me. That
Mm.
just kind of stayed with me.
Yeah, it's amazing how those early influences in our lives can shape who we are.
Yes.
I had a teacher in elementary. When I was 6, I was separated from my mom for about 7 years. I'd go live with my dad and my grandmother. And there was a teacher named Mrs. Bussy, Miss Bussy.
Okay.
Miss Bussy she was this heavy set white woman. And I say that because I used to love hugging her and she allowed me to hug her. And I remember trying to wrap my arms around it. It was almost like trying to wrap your arms around Santa Claus.
Yes.
But Miss Bussy knew the environment that I was in, which was
Okay.
very traumatic. There were situations where, Children's Protective Services came to school because I had scars and all of that.
Wow. Okay.
But Miss Bussy knew, she said, Michael, the key to your success is your intellect.
Mm-hmm.
She says, you're one of the smartest kids in the class, if not the smartest kid in the class. So she says, no matter what you do, I want you to come to class and I want you to make sure that you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so for 6 years, I was a straight A student,
Great.
primarily because I love Miss Bussy and I loved going to her class, but also because my mom told me that in order for me to move back with her, I needed to do good in school. So I had that incentive to be smart because I wanted to get back to my mom
Mm-hmm.
and because I wanted to impress Miss Bussy. And so those two people, my mom and Miss Bussy, were the foundation of me growing my intellect and being smart.
Okay,
And
great.
started at a very, very early age. So it's amazing how certain people play such pivotal roles in our lives. And as we look back in retrospect, we can see the impression that they made for us and how they shape us. And so it's amazing how you talk about your teachers, even at that young age, we see how they influenced our lives.
And
So
also, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Michael.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and also, Michael, because of the era that we grew up in, we kind of had to find our heroes and our sheroes right within our own neighborhood, our own culture, some kind of way. Because again, we couldn't turn on the TV and see anyone to really inspire us,
Right, right.
And yes, there were heroes at that time and sheroes at that time. There were businessmen, entrepreneurs at that time, Black entrepreneurs at that time that were doing things, but we really never heard about them because the media didn't tell us anything about them. So unless you had someone in your neighborhood or right within your home or in your school, basically that was the only way you could get like someone that you could look up to or even see as a mentor, because you just couldn't turn on the TV and see that. You just couldn't listen to the news and see that. So you asked earlier about the man, and I thought about that. As I got older, there were men like Muhammad Ali that you could look up to. There were men like Barry Gordy that you could look up to. There were some there, but they were few and far in between. And so you had to find someone that was right within because turning on the TV and seeing someone that looks like you is good. It's powerful, it's good. We miss that growing up.
Yeah,
Kids today, they can kind of see that.
right.
But even if you can see that, it's much more powerful when the person that you can look to is someone right in your house or right your next door neighbor, or you can look to your grandparent, or you can look to an uncle, or you can look to a teacher that you communicate with on a regular basis, because then you get an opportunity to talk with them. You can ask them, well, how did you do this? Can you tell me how to do this? Can you steer me in the right direction? All those things are very important. And we as Black men, for the most part, many of us didn't have that growing up. So now we have to figure that out. We have to find a way to figure that out. And it can be painful and it can be kind of confusing. But the good thing is that it can be done. It just takes some work and it takes some effort. And once you get on the path of figuring it out and trying to work it out and learning exactly what to do, the road gets easier and easier. It's just a process that you must get started. You have to get started. You can't keep making excuses that I can't do this because I'm Black. I can't do this because I was born and raised in the projects. You have to let all of those excuses go, because that is what society wants us to hold on to. They want us to hold on to the fact that I can't do this because I live in the projects. I can't do this because I went to a school that didn't give me the best education. All When we do those types of things, they don't have to hold us down because we hold ourselves down.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I love the slogan of 100 Black men. And their slogan is, what they see is what they'll be.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially back, as you mentioned, in the 60s, what we saw, if we turn on the television, was not inspirational, was not something that we wanted to emulate or follow.
Yes.
See, that's why I launched this platform, the Shatter the Stereotypes platform, so that Black men could see and engage and interact with other Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. Because my contention is, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. The media simply has not showcased those role models.
Exactly.
And they constantly reinforce this idea there are no Black male role models.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it is now, in my opinion, incumbent upon us as Black people to create platforms and resources that expose us to us that are doing amazing things. And that's why I do the work that I do.
Well,
So,
a good example.
Go ahead.
A good example of how the media works is what you just said. Now, even though I grew up in a house without a father, I grew up thinking, and according to the media, the way they make it look, they make it look like, for the most part, most Black men do not stay home and take care of their families. But that is a actual lie. If you really dig in and you look at the statistics, most Black men stay home, they stay married, and they stay with their children, and they take care of those children. Most Black children are raised in two-family homes, but that's not something that the media makes us think. They make us think it's just the opposite.
Right. Yeah. So in my book, Shattering Black Male Stereotypes, I talk about the illusion, the stereotype that Black men are deadbeat dads. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, actually did a study. And what they found was that Black men were actually more involved in their children's lives than men of other races. And
exactly.
That's not just conjecture, that's fact. The
right.
CDC, objective reporting. So the numbers support the idea that we as Black men, we love our children, but if you pay attention to mainstream media, what do you see? Deadbeat dads.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your book, Rethinking Failure. Now, I love that title. So the first thing I want to start off with, you wrote a book called Rethinking Failure. So it's obvious that you've had some failures in your life that you were able to turn around. So why don't you share a couple of those failures, or what you perceived as failure at the time? What are some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
Okay, well, some of the challenges I had to overcome, I had a failed marriage that I had to overcome. I had felt at some jobs that I had to overcome. I had failure. I lost homes, I lost cars, I went into debt. There were, when doing this road of entrepreneurship, what I have learned is that failure is just a part of the system, is part of the game. And so in the early years when I had failures, I looked at them as a negative, bad thing. I wondered, what did I do wrong and why did this have to happen? But what I've learned through the years in the growth, because what I came to understand, and it didn't take me long to see this, Michael, that I would go through these failures. and I would lose things, whether it was a marriage, whether it was a home, whether it was a car, whether it was a job, whatever I lost. During that time, I went through that failure and I thought it was just a terrible thing. But then eventually I began to realize when I rebounded, every time I rebounded, I gained more than I had before the failure. And I started to notice, okay, seems like every time I fall down, when I get back up, I'm in a better place than I was before I fell down. So I began to see failure in a whole new way. I began to understand that no, failure is not something that's supposed to take away from you. Failure is something that's supposed to add to you. It's supposed to give you more. It's supposed to strengthen you. You're supposed to learn. You're supposed to benefit from those failures. So failure, I don't even know how to say, because to me, the negativity that goes with the word, we need to take that negativity away. Failure should actually be seen in a more positive sense, because what it means is, it means that you are exercising yourself. You are growing. You are learning what doesn't work so that you can find out what does work. And so my book is about, and again, this all goes back to childhood. And the example that I use in the book is this. When you were a child and learning to walk, and you fell down several different times and tried and tried and tried, and you kept falling down, your parents or no one else, even though it was a failure, technically from what we define failure as, no one criticized you for that. As a matter of fact, they applauded you. Good try, you'll get it, good try, good try. But somehow, some kind of way, eventually, instead of applauding you when you tried that business, instead of applauding you when you tried, learning algebra, and you failed, instead of applauding you when you tried for a job and you didn't get it, they no longer applauded you for your failures. They didn't say good try, good try. They were like, oh, that's a shame, you need to do better. So at some point in time, instead of cheering you on for trying, they start criticizing you for trying. And that's when failure took a turn, and we started thinking that it was a bad and negative thing. So that starts from childhood. So we have to go back to that area of childhood, and we have to start realizing when and where we in our mind begin to associate failure with something that's negative. We have to root out that thought and retrain our thought process to, again, not that I'm saying that failure is pleasant. No, we don't really like it. We don't really want to do it. And I'm not saying it's ever going to be joyful, but what we have to do, we have to expect it, because if you don't expect it and you don't plan for it, you're never going to grow. It's just part of the growing process.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite mentors is a guy named Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
Wayne Dyer passed away a few years ago, but he's one of my favorite teachers. And I probably learned the most powerful lesson about failure from him. And this is what he said. There is no such thing as failure. There is only the non-attainment of a desired result.
Yes, exactly.
So if we think about that, because unfortunately what happens is when we fail at something, we wanted a result. We didn't get that result. So now we say we failed. But the bad news is people internalize it as I'm a failure. And when you internalize it that I'm a failure, you're going to be less likely to want to try again because you're afraid of failing.
Exactly.
And so what you just said is really powerful, because what we have to be willing to do is change our concept of what failure really is.
Mm-hmm.
Failure is the non-attainment of a desired result. For example, I wanted to create a happy family, a happy marriage, but I went through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I failed? No, I didn't attain the result that I wanted.
Right.
The lesson that I learned was I needed to do some stuff, some inner work within myself, so that when I set the intention of creating a new result, meaning a desired marriage, then I needed to deal with my stuff first
Mm-hmm.
so that I can now create the result that I wanted. So I had to do my inner work. I set a new intention.
Right.
And now I've been blissfully married for the past 19 years.
Okay, great.
But
Great.
I have to be willing to go through that failure, that first divorce, to recognize what I needed to do within myself so that my next marriage would not fail.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
what we have to be willing to do is say, what is the lesson that I need to learn if I didn't accomplish this desired result?
Exactly.
Because
Which is where,
what I believe is that I actually wrote a book called Adversity is Your Greatest Ally.
okay, great.
I
I
honestly,
like that title.
yeah, I honestly believe every adversity brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough.
Exactly.
Now, it's difficult and challenging, but if we're willing to do that, then we lay the groundwork for change and transformation. So your thoughts?
Well, I'm in total agreement with you on that. And the sad part about it is so many of us, especially Black men, because of the backgrounds that we had growing up, we don't perceive it that way. You know, we already are dealing with this issue. Am I enough? Am I good enough? And then when you take on this negative idea about failure, I, as a Black man, I tried this business and it failed. I, as a Black man, I tried this career. I tried being a good salesman and I failed. Or I tried to be a real estate agent and I failed. And I'm already not feeling the most confident because I've been brought up not to feel the most confident. So now that I fail at selling real estate, or I sell at selling insurance, or I sell at this new business, with all, it just adds to that inferiority complex that I already have. And it's harder for us to break free of that. But we have to find a way to break free from it, because as long as we don't break free from it, you know, the physical chains have been taken away, but the mental chains still remain. And we have to break those mental chains. It's up to us to break some mental chains. Nobody can do that for you. That's something you have to do for yourself. You have to find a way to break those mental chains. And so the best way to do that is to surround yourself with people like yourself, people that are influencers, people that have walked the path, people that know the path. Find yourself a mentor. Find yourself somebody that you can look up to, that can tell you, hey, brother, you can do this. You can, and not only can you do this, but if you need some help, I'll show you how to do this. See, we need guidance. We need some guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with that being said, so I wrote a book called The Cure for Onlyness, a Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And the book addresses that feeling of onlyness that we as Black men feel when we're the only person of color in an environment. Okay. So for most of my life, you know, I've been called the sellout. I've been called trying to be white because I'd go to these seminars. I'd be the only Black person in the room. And so I've been criticized, ostracized, vilified because of how I think. A lot of Black people say that I don't know what it means to be Black because of my optimism.
Yes.
So we have to deal with all of those forces.
Exactly.
External and internal. But my question to you, though, is I'm sure you've had that same experience, that same feeling where you were the only person of color in an environment or whatever, maybe the books you're reading or whatever you're learning. So how do you address that feeling of onlyness when you know as a Black man that you're not denying your ethnicity, you're simply wanting to improve yourself? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's a very valid point. And the only way you can deal with it, Michael, is to just remain confident in that what you're doing, that you're not selling out, that you're not denying your Blackness. You're not denying your heritage. Because yeah, we do hear that, oh, you think you're white. Oh, Black people don't do that. Well, my
Right.
question is, what do you mean Black people don't do that? Why can't we do that? So yeah, and I'm not trying to be white. I am trying to be me. I'm trying to be the best me that I can be. And if it means that I have to go into these environments where there are predominantly white people, then that's what I need to do. But it's not that I'm trying to be them. I don't want to be them. I want to be me. And so, yeah, that's something that we have to deal with. But I think that comes with just knowing within yourself. You have to just know within yourself, hey, this is what I need to do to be who I need to be. And I'm not denying my race. I'm not denying my Blackness. But what I am doing, I'm here to make them understand, not the other Black people, but to make these white people understand that we can do anything that they can do, that we are just as good as they are, that whatever environment they want to put us in, we can handle it. Just give us the opportunity. The problem is you've never given us the opportunity. Give us the opportunity and we'll take advantage of it.
Yeah. And so my perception, my belief, my interpretation of that is collectively, as a collective, white people in general have done everything possible to try to hold us down, to oppress us. But if you think about it, in our short lifetimes as Black men, I'm 60. So what are you, 65? If you don't mind asking?
66.
66.
As a matter of fact, I'll be 67 next month.
There you go. But think about it though. In our short lifetime, as I look at the progress that we as Black people have made in this country, I'm inspired. I never in any way have felt victimized by being Black. I haven't denied that racism exists and discrimination.
Right.
I know all those things are very real. But at the same time, one of the guys that I follow is a guy named Neil Donald Walsh. And Neil Donald Walsh said this. He says, your purpose is to become the grandest version of the greatest vision you hold for yourself as a human being.
Okay.
So for me, that's what I've done all my life. I've simply tried to become the best version of myself.
Right. Okay.
So I've been reading all these books and doing all this work and going to these seminars. Not that I'm trying to be white or trying to be somebody that I'm not. I wanted to become the best version of myself.
Exactly.
And so making the investment in my own potential is how I transform myself and the world around me.
Exactly.
Because by becoming the best version of myself, I become a representative for Black men so that they can follow my lead.
Exactly.
That's the goal. To become the best version of ourselves. And then as the saying goes, reach one and teach one.
Exactly.
Pull that next person up. And so the reason I do this show, the reason that I write books is I'm trying to pull brothers up.
Yes.
To let them know what's possible. Because again, I believe anything is possible. Now,
yes.
Another point that I want to touch base on, James, that you talked a little bit about, especially as Black men, is that there's this cultural conditioning that says, you get to a certain age and you might as well give up on your dreams. You're too old. People turn 40 and they be freaking out like, oh my gosh, I'm old. I can't do anything. So talk a little bit about, number one, there's no limit to what we can accomplish no matter what age we are. But speak directly to that guy out there who may be 40 or over, and he's thinking, dang, it's too late. What do you say to him?
Yeah, what I say to him is, first of all, what everyone says, it's never too late. But the reason it's never too late is because, again, it goes back to that voice, that inner voice that you spoke about earlier. If you're 40, if you're 50, if you're 60, and you have goals and desires that you still have, that inner voice is, because when you are denying yourself, you can try to ignore it all you want, but your inner being is telling you, hey, you're denying yourself. In fact, I made a post on Facebook today, and I talked about happiness, because I talk with people all the time who say they're happy, and that's a lie. You're using that as an excuse. You're not really happy, because if you were really happy, you would be doing what you want to do. You're saying you're happy on one side, but on the other side, you're not doing the career that you want to have. You're not in the relationship that you would like to have. You're not taking the vacations that you would like to take. You're not doing the things that equal happiness. But you're saying, and the reason you're saying you're happy is because you're not willing to do the work to make the changes that you need to change so that you can actually be happy. So in my post today, that was my challenge to the people. Stop saying you're happy when you have all these internal things in you telling you you should be doing this, you want to do this, and you're not doing it. So you need to find a new level of happiness, and you're only going to find that by respecting and loving yourself, really loving yourself. And that love comes from following your true nature, recognizing your true identity, and being true to yourself, not true to who other people want you to be, but being true to yourself. You have to find a way to break out of that bondage of stress, anxiety, and fear of going forward, doing the things in life that you want to do, because that's what's holding you back, is fear, stress, and anxiety. You fear what other people might think. You have the stress of, what if it doesn't work? You have the fear of, if it doesn't work, how am I going to pay the bills? You have all these excuses, you have to find a way to overcome all of that. And you have to find a way to follow your own inner strengths, your own inner being, and follow your own inner voice that's leading you where you need to be, where you need to go.
Now, that's a perfect segue into the work that you do with your coaching. So now I'd like you to talk about your coaching. What does it entail? For example, somebody watching this and they're going, damn, I really relate to what that brother's saying, but I don't know what my next steps are. What should I be doing? Well, one thing that they may consider is hiring a coach.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I love about society, which a lot of people may not notice, is that the coaching industry has exploded over the last few years.
Yes, it has.
And the coaching industry allows anyone to gain access to mentors and coaches and teachers that can support them in transforming their lives.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit as we wind down here, because time flies when we're having fun. But let's talk a little bit about your coaching program. What do you offer?
Okay, what I offer is, I mostly coach people that are in midlife and older, who are struggling with the fact that now I'm in my 40s or my 50s, maybe even 60s, but from 40 and up, and I'm looking at my life, and all those things that I expected and wanted in my 20s and 30s, now I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling depressed, because I don't have those things. I don't have the career, I don't have a home. I don't have a financial security. And I'm already midway through my life, or maybe even be a little bit beyond that. And I don't see a way out of this. You know, everything that I've done hasn't gotten me what I wanted. Everything that I've done hasn't gotten me any results. And I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get out of this. And even if I get out of it, all I can see is that it's going to cause me a whole lot of grief and pain to try to correct the problem. Well, what I do is I help them to correct the problem without having to go through grief and pain. I show them how you can correct the problem without giving up a whole lot of your spare time learning a whole lot of new things. You don't have to take a whole lot of seminars and a whole lot of courses. You don't have to read a whole lot of books. You don't have to go and spend a whole lot of time in the gym. You don't have to do those things. What you do have to do is you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy that you can incorporate within your present life that will help you transform and find a new way of living. And you can do that, but you just need someone to guide you and show you not how to add more to your life, but just how to remanage your life.
Nice. And so for those who are watching this and may know nothing about coaching, so what are the logistics? For example, in a coaching session, you meet once a week, once a month. How does your coaching program flow?
Okay, normally with COVID and everything, we're going to do Zoom like we're doing now. We'll do a Zoom meeting a couple times a month, and we'll do a phone call on the off weeks where we don't do the Zoom meeting. We'll do a phone conversation. And the coaching sessions, the shortest session normally lasts 6 months. That's my shortest session. But then I actually have like 4 different packages that I offer. The shortest one is 6 months, and then the longest one goes out to 5 years. And the reason be that is because once a person gets into coaching, more than likely it's going to be something that's going to be, they may start out as a short-term thing, but they're going to find it more as a long-term, because once they see the progress that's being made, they're going to want to continue that progress. And you can't just, you are already in your 30s or 40s and 50s. You can't just change your whole thought process, your whole way of life in just 6 months. That's a good start to build a foundation. But now that the foundation is built, then you need to go on from there and really complete the structure. You build the foundation, but now you've got to build the building. And so what we do is we carry that out for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever you need to do that. But that's what the coaching is. Everyone, myself included, needs a coach. And because a coach sees things more objectively than you can, because you're in the picture, you're part of the picture. So you can't really you try to step back, but you can't really be as objective as you need to be. Someone that's coaching you and looking from the outside in can say, well, yeah, what you're doing, that's good. That's a good idea. That's a good plan. However, what about if you try this? What about if you try, what do you think this would do for you? What do you think that would do for you? And they can make you see things clearer because you're not so caught up in, as they say, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah. And again, I highly recommend coaching. James, give them your website, or how can they contact you if they're interested in your coaching services?
Yes, my website, the web address is www.cerebramatics.com. And I always spell that out, Michael, because most people, Cerebramatics, so that's CEREBRAMATICS. Cerebramatics.com.
And there will be a link. There will be a link below your video also, so it'll go directly to your site.
Okay. And on that site, too, I also offer them free tools that they can download. They can just download some free tools to help get them started, to help them to see, this is where I am and this is where I'm trying to go. And those tools will kind of give them a roadmap on where to start. Because once they get started, once you start the process, as you already know, Michael, we've been doing this. We started in our youth and we're still doing it. Once you get started, there's no turning back. You'll keep going. The problem is you must get started.
Absolutely. You know what they say, that the mind is like a rubber band. Once it's stretched, it can't go back to its original size. So we've got
exactly,
which is great. So with that being said, James, I want to give you an opportunity to share your last thoughts and words of wisdom with the audience as we close out. What do you want to say?
My last thoughts that I want to share with the audience is I want you to start waking up every day, and I want you to come up with a mantra that you tell yourself that will start your day in a positive way. And I'll share my mantra with you to show you what I mean. But if you start your day in a positive way and you keep repeating your mantra, whatever your mindset is now, you will start to see some changes taking place. And each day I start myself, and I even put this in the front page of the book, Rethinking Failure. I share this there. My mantra that I start my day with, I say, this is the best day of my life thus far. I am closer to living my dreams than I have ever been. I start myself day saying that, and I repeat that throughout the day, because what it tells me is, first of all, this is the best day of my life. And the so far means that I can expect it to be even better tomorrow, because it's just the best day so far. And I'm closer to my dream than I have ever been, tells me that's encouragement. If I'm closer than I have ever been, why should I stop now? Why should I give up now? That encourages me to keep going. And I came up with that because I came to understand by watching commercials, that commercials, they feed you a thing over and over and over. And the reason they do that is they know that once they tell you Pepsi is so good for so long, you're going to go out and buy it. Once McDonald's tells you it's got the best fry in the world for so long, you're going to taste it and you're going to say they're the best fries in the world. So I teach my clients and I tell them, if they can condition you by feeding you some slogan over and over and over, and it makes you act or react in a certain way, why don't you create a slogan for yourself that you repeat to yourself over and over and over again that will cause you to act or react in the way that you want to act?
Absolutely. And there's so much power in affirmations. Affirming something to ourselves changes and transforms our inner being.
Right.
So I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of having a mantra, an affirmation that you repeat on a daily basis. So with that, as we wind down this episode, I just want to share my mantra with the audience as we close out. And this is the mantra I've been using for the past 30-something years. And it's simple. Every day, in every way, I keep getting better and better.
Yes.
Every day, in every way, I keep getting better.
Getting better and better, yes.
So my goal, my purpose, as Neil Donald Walsh says, is to become the grandest version of the greatest vision I hold for myself as a human being. And by holding on to that mantra, I commit to constant and never-ending improvement. And in doing so, my life always improves.
Yes.
This has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes. Don't forget that mantra. Every day, in every way, keep getting better and better. We'll see you next episode. Take care.
Thank you. And thank everyone for joining us.